Okay guys, so today we are going to look in a little bit more detail at the poem London. So for the last lesson, I got you to read the poem a couple of times, I got you to listen to the poem a couple of times, and hopefully that should have cemented the basic idea of the poem in your mind. So you should understand the basic story. I then got you to fill out the poetry help sheet. And what we're going to do today is I'm going to analyse it a little bit for you, and then the idea is for you to redo that worksheet and see if you find it any easier once I've sort of been through it in detail with you and picked out some of the bits for you. So these were the objectives that we wanted to sort of understand when we look at a poem, any poem, not just this poem, but any poem that we are going to be looking at. This is the outcome that we want. Okay, so here is the poem. So we're going to start off nice and easy. This one I haven't given to you. So I want you to look at where I've highlighted the letter I, all throughout the poem, and I've put a little question in the top corner of the slide. What does the use of the pronoun I tell us? So that is one for you to think about yourselves and answer yourselves. Hopefully you should all get that. That's pretty easy. Then on the left, so we move down to, and mark in every face I meet, marks of weakness, marks of woe. So the repetition of the word mark uses different meanings. So if you really look at that and think about it, you might not have noticed, but every single mark here actually means something different. So the first mark is to notice something, so the noticing every face that they meet. The second mark is sort of a sign, so signs of weakness. And then the third mark is referring to sort of scars, so marks of woe. So what physically is there that we can see that makes us understand that they are miserable, woeful. And what that does is it emphasises the effect on both the speaker and the people that he is observing. The next stanza then, in every cry of every man, in every infant's cry of fear, in every voice, in every ban, the mind-forged manacles I hear. So again, I've highlighted the every on those lines. There's quite a few of them there. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 everys in just 3 lines of that stanza. So again, that kind of highlights the universal effects of oppression. So it's saying that this applies to everybody. So every man, every infant, so even the children are affected by this. And it just sort of really highlights and emphasises the effect of the oppression. And the last line on that stanza, mind-forged manacles. So last lesson, or the lesson before, I'm not sure now, I've slept since then, sorry guys. I got you to look up a couple of words for me and find the meanings, and manacles was one of them. And if you did that research, you would know that they are physical restraints. So this is sort of a metaphor because it says mind-forged manacles. So what it's saying is that these are psychological chains that are created and maintained by ideas and beliefs. The next stanza then. So, how the chimney sweepers cry, every blackening church appalls, and the hapless soldiers sigh, runs in blood down palace walls. So the first and the third line of that stanza then, there is what we call a definite article. So that's the use of the word the. So it creates an archetype rather than an individual character. So it's again the same as the repetition of every. It's again showing that this is a universal. So it's not just referring to one chimney sweeper when it says the chimney sweeper, it's referring to all chimney sweepers. It's not just referring to one soldier when it says the hapless soldier's sigh, it's referring to all soldiers. And the hapless soldier's sigh, there is actually a little bit of sibilance in there, so if you say it out loud yourselves, you'll sort of hear that hissing sound. And that could present a soldier as powerless because it sort of emphasises that sighing sound like this. And then we'll have a look at the final stanza. So, but most through midnight streets I hear, how the youthful harlots curse, blast the newborn infant's tear, and blights with plagues the marriage hearse. So the second line of that then, youthful harlot's curse, I've highlighted that along with newborn infant's tear, because that is a juxtaposition. So you've got this youthful harlot idea on one line, and it sort of juxtaposes with the baby's cry on the line below, and it's sort of suggesting the corruption of innocence. So you're pairing something that you wouldn't usually. So you wouldn't usually talk about a prostitute and a newborn baby in the same light. Another one there that's highlighted in green, so marriage hearse, that is an example of oxymoron. So it's marriage, obviously, people getting married, and a hearse, again, this is one of the words that I asked you to look up on one of the tasks in the previous lessons. So that is actually a funeral car. So they're sort of pairing the idea of marriage and death together. Okay, so this last slide then, I've tried to focus a little bit on structure and context. So this time around we did a lot of the context research at the beginning of the poem before we'd even looked at the poem. Hopefully that's helped a little bit, and it's helped to give you a little bit of an idea of what the poem is about and the tone. So the structure then that Blake uses, it's a regular alternate rhyme that runs throughout. So if you look on the first stanza, you've got street, meet, flow, woe. On the second stanza, you've got man, ban, fear, here. It's like that from beginning to end. And this could symbolise the inevitability of ordinary life. So it's repetitive, it's predictable. You know that in every stanza that's the way it's going to be. So that could be symbolic of the way that life was like then and how it was represented. In the third stanza then, so chimney sweepers. So you did a lot of research on this when I asked you to look at 18th century London. So child labour was common and chimney sweepers struggled due to poverty and oppression, so they were forced to work in order to make a living. That is the same as the final stanza, youthful harlot's curse. So that really sort of emphasises the fact that young women were forced into this. It was a curse, it was a way of surviving. They had to do it in order to survive. So yeah, that hopefully has given you a little bit of food for thought, a little bit more in-depth analysis, rather than just throwing you in at the deep end like I did last week. But I promised there was a reason for that, and it was to see how much you could get for yourselves just through listening to the poem and reading the poem. And some of you did really well actually with that, and I think the best responses were those where you had understood what life was like in 18th century London. So I think the research on the context really helped with that. So what I want you to do now after this video is I want you to go back to that Poetry Stalker help sheet. I want you to fill in a new one, which is in the shared area, a blank one, and I want you to fill it in again. If you want to look at this video again, that's fine, or just have a listen to the poem again or read the poem again before you do it, that's fine. But I want to see if you've got a deeper understanding of it now, if you can make connections between what you know, what you've researched about the historical context and what life was like then, and the words that are being used, the language that's being used. And remember, we're trying to identify the way that the poet has created meaning. So yeah, off you go, guys. Give that a go. If you need anything, email me. And I will see you for our next lesson.